The great hall of the Galactic Council stretched for miles. Crystal pillars rose toward a ceiling that showed the stars themselves. Thousands of alien delegates sat in floating seats, their voices mixing into a low hum. At the center of this grand chamber stood a single human woman. Ambassador Yuna kept her back straight and her face calm. She had stood in this same spot many times before. 300 years ago, humanity had joined the Galactic Council with hope in their hearts. They believed they would find friends among the stars. They believed wrong. The Council recognizes the representative from Earth, announced High Arbiter Valinas. He was a tall creature with silver skin and 4 arms. His voice carried no warmth. It never did when he spoke to humans. Yuna bowed her head slightly. High Arbiter. Honored delegates. I come before you with an urgent matter. A plague has spread across 17 human colony worlds. Our people are dying. We request medical aid and supplies from the Council's emergency reserves. Silence fell over the chamber. Then came the laughter. It started soft from the back rows. Then it spread like fire. Delegates from 100 species laughed at the human woman. Some did not even try to hide their amusement. Others whispered to each other behind their hands. Valinas raised one of his 4 arms. The laughter slowly died. Ambassador Yuna, the Council's resources are limited. We must prioritize species of greater importance. Greater importance, Yuna repeated. Her voice did not shake. May I ask what determines importance, High Arbiter? Contribution, value, legacy? Valena smiled, showing rows of small teeth. Humans live such short lives. You breed quickly and die quickly. Your species has been part of this council for 3 centuries, yet you still sit in the observer section. You have no vote, no voice. You are. How do your people say it? Guests. Guess, another delegate called out. Who do the work no one else will do? More laughter. Yuna thought about the humans who patrolled the Vorax border, fighting pirates so other species could sleep safely. She thought about the engineers who maintained trade routes through dangerous space. She thought about the scientists who had cured 11 alien diseases in the last century alone. She thought about the soldiers who had died holding the line against threats the Council refused to face. Guests, that was what they called humanity. Guests who cleaned the house, guarded the doors, and fixed what was broken. Guests who were never invited to sit at the table. The Council denies your request, Valonas announced. Resources will be allocated to species with voting status. Humans may apply again in 50 years, when the next review cycle begins. 50 years. By then, millions would be dead. Yuna bowed again. I understand, High Arbiter. Thank you for your time. She walked out of the chamber with her head held high. She did not look back at the laughing delegates. She did not let them see the tears that burned in her eyes. That night, Yuna sat alone in her small quarters on the station. The room was simple. Humans were not given luxury apartments like other ambassadors. They were given storage rooms, converted into living spaces. She opened a secure channel to Earth. The face of Admiral Ginho appeared on her screen. He was an older man with gray hair and tired eyes. But those eyes were sharp. They had seen too much to ever be soft again. How did it go? He asked. The same as always, Yuna replied. They laughed. They denied us. They told us to wait 50 years. Jinho nodded slowly. And what do you think we should do? Yuna was quiet for a long moment. She looked out her small window at the stars. Somewhere out there, human children were dying from a plague that could be cured in a week with proper medicine. Somewhere out there, human soldiers were bleeding for people who saw them as insects. I think, she said softly, that we have been patient long enough. Jinho's expression did not change. Are you certain? There is no going back. I am certain. The Admiral closed his eyes. When he opened them again, something had shifted. A decision had been made. 300 years of hope, patience, and quiet dignity had led to this single moment. Send the word, Ginho said. One word. You know which one? Yuna nodded. Her fingers moved across the console. She typed a single word and sent it to every human in the galaxy. Every colony, every ship, Every station, every soldier, scientist, engineer, and child. The word was enough. Within hours, the great machine began to move. Ships that had been secretly prepared for decades powered up their engines. Colony populations packed what little they needed. Families gathered their children. Soldiers returned from distant posts. Scientists saved their research and wiped their databases. No one spoke to the aliens. No one explained. No one said goodbye. Within 72 hours, 40 billion humans vanished from the known galaxy. 300 colony worlds stood empty. Ships that had patrolled borders for centuries were gone. Stations that had been built by human hands were abandoned. The Galactic Council woke to silence. At first, they did not understand. Delegates sent messages to human contacts. The messages went unanswered. They sent ships to human worlds. The ships found only empty buildings and quiet streets. Valina stood in the great chamber, reading report after report. His silver face showed confusion, then annoyance, then something that might have been the beginning of fear. "Where are they?" he demanded. Where did the humans go? No one could answer. A junior delegate approached with a small data pad. "Hi, Arbiter. We found something. It appears the humans left one final record." "What does it say?" The delegate swallowed hard. "It is a financial document, High Arbiter. It shows that before they left, the humans paid all their debts to the Council. Every credit, every fee, every tax." He paused. "They owe us nothing. And they left without asking for anything in return." Valina stared at the datapad. For the first time in his long life, he did not know what to say. The humans had not declared war. They had not made threats. They had not begged or pleaded. They had simply left. And somehow, that was worse than anything else they could have done. The first week after the humans left, the Galactic Council celebrated. High Arbiter Valonas gave a speech in the Great Chamber. His forearms spread wide as he addressed the delegates. "At last, we are free of the human burden. They took their short lives and their strange emotions elsewhere. The galaxy is cleaner for their absence." The delegates cheered. They raised glasses filled with expensive drinks. They made jokes about the little creatures who had finally learned their place. The celebrations lasted 3 days. On the 4th day, the problems began. The Vorix border was a dangerous stretch of space between the civilized galaxy and the wild regions beyond. Pirates, smugglers, and worse things lived there. For 200 years, human patrol ships had kept the border secure. They had asked for nothing but fuel and basic supplies. They had fought and died in the darkness so others could live in the light. Now the border was empty. Within 2 weeks, pirate attacks increased by 300%. Trade ships were captured. Wealthy merchants were held for ransom. Entire cargo convoys disappeared without a trace. The Council sent their own fleets to patrol the border. The soldiers of other species were not used to such dangerous work. They complained about the conditions. They demanded better pay. Many refused to go at all. The humans did this for centuries, one admiral reported to the Council. They never complained. "We do not know how they managed it. That was only the beginning." The Kelthian trade routes were the economic heart of the galaxy. Thousands of ships traveled them every day, carrying goods worth trillions of credits. The routes passed through unstable space, filled with gravity wells and radiation storms. Human engineers had maintained the navigation beacons and safety systems that made travel possible one by one. The beacons failed. Ships began to disappear. Routes that had been safe for generations became death traps. "Why did we not have our own engineers?" demanded a delegate from the Kelthian Federation. The answer was simple. Human engineers had been cheaper. They had been efficient. They had worked without rest and fixed problems before anyone knew they existed. Why would the Council pay more for less? Medical research across the galaxy ground to a halt. The best hospitals had employed human doctors and scientists. Human researchers had developed cures for diseases that had plagued alien species for thousands of years. They had worked for low wages and poor conditions. driven by a desire to help that other species could not understand. Now the laboratories stood empty. Research projects were abandoned. Diseases that had been nearly defeated began to spread again. Lorekeeper Orith watched the council descend into chaos. Orith was ancient, older than most species could count. Their body was a mass of floating crystals that glowed with soft light. They had seen empires rise and fall. They had watched proud civilizations destroy themselves. Orith had tried to warn the council about humans. Not because humans were dangerous, but because they were valuable. So valuable that losing them would break everything. No one had listened. Now, Orith floated into the great chamber during an emergency session. The delegates were arguing, shouting, blaming each other for the crisis. Valina sat on his throne with his head in his hands. "May I speak?" Orith asked. Their voice was like wind chimes in a storm. The chamber fell silent. Even Valina's looked up. No one ignored the lorekeeper. They were too old, too wise, too respected. "You treated them as servants," Orith said. "You forgot they were volunteers? Volunteers?" Valina's repeated. "They were members of the council. They had obligations." "No," Orith replied. "They had hope. They joined us because they believed in friendship between species. They stayed because they believed things would get better. Every task they performed, they chose to perform. Every sacrifice they made freely." Orith's crystals glowed brighter. "You gave them nothing but contempt. You laughed at their short lives while they spent those lives serving you. You mocked their emotions while they felt compassion for your suffering. And now they have made a choice." "What choice?" Valina's demanded. "They have chosen to stop." The words hung in the air. The delegates shifted uncomfortably in their seats. Some looked ashamed. Others looked angry. But none of them could argue with the truth. "They will come back," Valina said. "They need us. They cannot survive alone in the void." Orith made a sound that might have been laughter. "You understand nothing. Humans do not need you. They never did. They stayed because they wanted to. They helped because they cared. And you taught them to stop caring." A young delegate raised her hand. She was from a species that had joined the council recently. "What can we do? How do we fix this?" Orith turned their glowing form toward her. "That is the wrong question, child. You cannot fix what is already broken. The humans are gone. They will not return because you ask nicely. They will not return because you finally realize their worth." "Then what is the right question?" Orith was silent for a long moment. "The right question is, what will you do now that they are gone? Will you learn from this? Will you change? Or will you find new servants to abuse until they too decide that enough is enough?" No one answered. That night, Valina's received a report that made his blood run cold. The Wraith Nebula, a prison dimension at the edge of known space, had begun to destabilize. Something ancient and terrible lived inside that nebula, sealed away by technology that no living species understood. No living species except humans. A team of human scientists, led by Dr. Minji, had maintained the containment field for decades. They had never asked for recognition. They had never complained about the danger. They had simply done the work because it needed to be done. Now they were gone, and the seals were failing. Valina stared at the report. His four hands trembled. "What have we done?" He whispered to the empty room. The stars outside his window offered no answer. But somewhere in the darkness, beyond the galaxy's edge, 40 billion humans traveled toward a new home. They did not look back. They did not feel guilt, or anger, or satisfaction. They felt only peace. For the first time in 300 years, they were free. Commander Thalric stood on the bridge of his flagship, watching the stars blur past. Behind him flew the largest fleet ever assembled by the Galactic Council. 5,000 warships, 2 million soldiers, enough firepower to conquer a dozen worlds, all of it sent to find the humans. Thalrix was a soldier. He had fought in 3 wars and won countless battles. He was not used to feeling uncertain. But this mission made no sense to him. "We are hunting people who did not attack us," he said to his second officer. "They simply left." The council commands it, the officer replied. That is enough. Was it? Thalrix was not sure. He had worked with humans before. He had served beside them during the Vorix campaigns. They had been good soldiers, brave, loyal, strange, yes, with their laughter and their tears and their songs, but good. Now he was supposed to drag them back like escaped prisoners. The fleet traced the humans, WARP signatures, to the galactic rim. The trail led beyond the edge of mapped space, into the darkness between galaxies. This was territory no council species had ever explored. The void was too empty, too cold, too far from anything familiar, but the humans had gone there willingly. They planned this, Thalrex realized. They have been planning this for a very long time. Meanwhile, deep in the void between galaxies, the human convoy stretched across light years of space. 40 billion people traveled in ships of every size. Some were military vessels, built for war, but carrying families instead. Others were cargo haulers converted into homes. There were research stations, hospital ships, and generation arcs that could sustain themselves for centuries. Admiral Jinho watched the convoy from the bridge of his flagship, the Homeward. He was tired. He had been tired for years, but now, for the first time in his life, the weight on his shoulders felt lighter. Status report, he said. All ships accounted for, replied a young officer named Soyan. No one left behind. The rearguard reports alien scouts attempting to follow. Tell Captain Taiwu to discourage them. No weapons unless fired upon first. Yes, Admiral. Ginho turned to look at the view screen. Behind them, the Milky Way galaxy was a spiral of light, slowly shrinking into the distance. Ahead was only darkness and the faint glow of their destination. A new galaxy they had named Hope. He thought about the old days. The early days. When humans had first joined the Council, they had believed in something. They had believed that different species could work together. They had believed that patience and kindness would be rewarded. They had believed that if they worked hard enough, they would eventually be accepted. 300 years of belief. 300 years of waiting, and in the end, they had been laughed at by creatures who would never see them as equals. General Deho entered the bridge. He was younger than Jinho, but no less experienced. His job had been simple. Plan for the day humanity would leave. He had spent 40 years doing it. The young ones are asking questions, Deho said. What kind of questions? They want to know how we did it. How we prepared an exodus for 40 billion people without anyone noticing? It was a tired smile, but real. Tell them the truth. Tell them everything, Deho nodded. He gathered the young officers and enlisted soldiers and spoke to them in the ship's common room. His voice was calm and clear. The Council gave us dangerous missions, he began. They sent us to places no other species would go. They thought they were punishing us. They thought they were using us. He paused. They were wrong. Every mission we flew, we mapped escape routes. Every border we patrolled, we studied the paths beyond. Every deep space assignment they gave us, we used to survey the void. The young soldiers listened in silence. They sent us to repair navigation beacons in unstable space. While we fixed their beacons, we built our own. Hidden beacons, secret routes, paths that led out of the galaxy. How long? Asked Soyan. How long were we planning this? 250 years, Deho replied. Since the generation of our great-great-grandparents, they knew we might need to leave someday. They hoped we would not, but they prepared anyway. Far behind them, Commander Thalrix's fleet reached the edge of the galaxy. The trail ended at a wall of empty space. No warp signatures. No signals. No evidence that anyone had ever been there. Impossible, Thalrix muttered. They cannot simply disappear. But they had. Thalrix ordered his ships to spread out and search. They scanned millions of cubic light years. They found nothing. The humans had erased their own trail with a thoroughness that bordered on impossible. How? His second officer asked. How did they hide 40 billion people? Thalrix thought about the human engineers he had known. They could fix anything. They could build anything. They had maintained the Council's most complex systems for centuries. Of course, they could hide themselves. They had learned from masters. They had been underestimated for 300 years. And in that time, they had learned every trick, every technique, every secret that the galaxy had to offer. "We have failed," Thalric said finally. "Send a message to the Council. The humans are gone. We cannot follow." He stood alone on the bridge, staring into the void. Somewhere out there, beyond the reach of his instruments, 40 billion humans traveled toward a new beginning. They had left without anger, without threats, without a single word of explanation, and that silence said more than any speech ever could. Captain Tai Wu's ship hung at the rear of the convoy, watching for pursuit. His crew was small, but dedicated. Their job was to protect the others, to make sure every human reached the new galaxy safely. A young crew member approached him. "Captain, the alien fleet has stopped following." Tai Wu nodded. "Good. They finally understand." "Understand what, sir?" Tai Wu looked at the distant stars. "That we are not coming back. That we do not want to be found. That we are not their property, or their servants, or their guests." He turned to face his crew. "We are human, and we are finally going home." The convoy continued its journey through the endless dark. Behind them, the old galaxy grew smaller and smaller until it was just another light in the sky. Ahead, a new galaxy waited. A new home. A new beginning. And this time, humanity would build something better. The Wraith Nebula exploded on a Tuesday. For thousands of years, an ancient horror had slept inside that cloud of purple gas. No one knew what it was. No one knew where it came from. They only knew that it was hungry, and it was evil, and it must never be allowed to wake. Human scientists had kept it sleeping. Dr. Mingy, Kay, and her team had worked in the darkness of that nebula for 30 years. They had maintained machines they barely understood. They had held back a nightmare with nothing but dedication and quiet courage. Now those scientists were gone, and the nightmare was awake. The creature that emerged from the Wraith Nebula had no name. It was older than the stars. It moved through space like a disease, consuming everything it touched. Stars died in its path. Planets crumbled to dust. Entire fleets vanished in seconds. 17 star systems were destroyed in the first week. The Galactic Council threw everything they had at the creature. Warships by the thousands. Weapons that could crack planets. Technology gathered from 100 species over 10,000 years. Nothing worked. In the end, it took the combined power of every remaining fleet to force the creature back into the nebula. They managed to rebuild the containment field, but the work was crude. It would hold for perhaps a century, perhaps less. The cost was beyond counting. Millions of soldiers dead. Hundreds of ships destroyed. Entire species pushed to the edge of extinction. High Arbiter Valina stood in the ruins of the Great Chamber. The crystal pillars were cracked. The ceiling that had shown the stars now showed only darkness. Half the delegates were dead or missing. He had aged 10 years in 10 days. His silver skin was dull. His 4 hands trembled constantly. He could not sleep. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw the creature. He saw the ships dying. He saw the faces of soldiers who had trusted him to protect them. "We need the humans," someone said. Valinas did not know who spoke. It did not matter. Everyone was thinking the same thing. He walked to the communication center and sat before the broadcast console. His aides had prepared a speech. It was full of diplomatic language and careful promises. He threw it away. Instead, he spoke from his heart. For the first time in his long life, he spoke honestly. "Humans of Earth," he said, his voice traveling into the void. "This is High Arbiter Valinas of the Galactic Council. I am speaking to you not as a leader, but as a fool who has finally seen his mistakes." He paused. His throat was tight. "We treated you as servants. We laughed at your short lives. We took everything you gave and offered nothing in return. We were wrong. We were cruel. We were blind. I am asking you to return. I offer full membership in the Council. Voting rights, representation, reparations for centuries of abuse. Whatever you want, it is yours. He lowered his head. Please. We need you. The galaxy needs you. Come back. The message flew into space at the speed of light. It would take years to reach the edge of the galaxy. Longer to cross the void between stars. Velenas waited for a response. None came, in a new galaxy far away. Dr. Minji stood on a hill overlooking a valley. The planet was called New Jeju, and it was beautiful. Blue oceans, green forests, mountains that touched the clouds. Behind her, human children played in fields of flowers. Their laughter echoed across the hills. They had never known the old galaxy. They had never felt the weight of being unwanted. To them, this world was home. The only home that mattered. Minji watched Velena's S-message on a small screen. Her assistants had captured it from the edge of the void. She listened to every word. When it was done, she turned off the screen. What do you think? Asked her colleague, a young man named Jisoo. I think he is sincere, Minji replied. I think he is afraid. I think he finally understands what he lost. Should we respond? Mingi looked at the children playing below. She thought about the years she had spent in the Wraith Nebula. The danger, the fear, the knowledge that if she made one mistake, billions would die. She had done that work without recognition, without thanks, without hope of reward. She had done it because it was right. No, she said finally. We will not respond. But they need help. The containment field will fail again. That is their problem now. Minji's voice was not cold. It was simply tired. We gave them 300 years. We gave them everything we had. And they taught us that kindness given to those who do not value it is kindness wasted. On another world, New Soul Ambassador Yuna sat in a garden with her granddaughter. The girl was 7 years old, with bright eyes and endless questions. Grandmother, why did we leave the old galaxy? Yuna smiled and pulled the girl close. Because we were not happy there, little one. Did the aliens hurt us? Not with weapons. But there are other ways to hurt people. They made us feel small. They made us feel worthless. And after a long time, we decided that we did not want to feel that way anymore. The girl thought about this. Did we leave because we were angry? No, Yuna shook her head. We left because we stopped wanting anything from them. Anger means you still care. We had moved past anger. We simply let go. What does that mean? Yuna looked at the sunset. The sky was painted in colors that had no names in the old language. Everything here was new. Everything was theirs. It means that we did not leave to punish them. We did not leave to make them sorry. We left because we finally understood that we deserved better, and the only way to find better was to build it ourselves. The girl nodded slowly, the way children do when they understand something important without being able to explain it. I like it here, she said. I am glad we came. So am I, little one. So am I. Far across the void in the archives of the Broken Council, Lorekeeper Orith floated alone. They had found an old book, brought from Earth centuries ago. It was written by a human philosopher named Marcus Aurelius. Orith read a single line, over and over again. The best revenge is to be unlike your enemy. The crystals of their body flickered with understanding. The humans had not left in anger. They had not sought revenge. They had simply chosen to be different, to be better, to walk away from cruelty instead of returning it. That was their final lesson, and the galaxy had learned it too late. 10 years passed like water through open hands. The Galactic Council was not the same. It would never be the same again. What had once been a mighty union of 1,000 species was now a broken thing. Held together by fear and necessity, without humans to patrol the borders, entire regions had fallen to pirates and warlords. Without human engineers to maintain the trade routes, commerce had slowed to a trickle. Without human scientists to cure diseases and solve problems, progress had stopped. But the worst damage was not physical. It was the trust. For centuries, the Council had worked because different species believed in it. They believed that together, they were stronger than apart. The humans had been the proof of that belief. Small, weak, short-lived humans who had given everything to a cause larger than themselves. When the humans left, they took that belief with them. And without it, the old hatreds returned. The Kelthian Federation accused the Vorix clans of stealing resources. The clans accused the Federation of blocking trade routes. Old enemies remembered old wars. New enemies found new reasons to fight. 3 major conflicts broke out in the first 5 years. 2 more followed. Millions died in battles that served no purpose except pride and fear. High Arbiter, Valinas watched his life's work crumble around him. He had led the council for 200 years. He had believed he was building something permanent, something good. Now he understood the truth. The council had not been good. It had been convenient. And when that convenience was challenged, when sacrifices needed to be made, the other species had revealed what they truly were: selfish, cruel, and alone. Just like him. On a quiet morning, Valinas walked to the communication center one final time. His steps were slow. His forearms hung limp at his sides. He was old now, older than he had ever expected to be. He had outlived his children, his friends, his enemies. He had outlived everything except his regrets. He sat before the console and began to speak. Humans of Earth, this is High Arbiter Valonas. This is my last message to you. He paused to gather his thoughts. This time, there was no speech prepared. There was nothing left except the truth. I am not asking you to return. I know you will not come back. I know that nothing I say can undo what was done. This message is not a request. It is not a demand. It is simply an apology. His voice cracked. He did not try to hide it. He was a fool. We were all fools. We measured worth by lifespan and strength. We did not see that worth is measured by what one chooses to give. You chose to give everything, and we gave you contempt. I spent my whole life believing I was wise. I believed I understood power and politics and the way the universe worked. But I did not understand the simplest truth. I did not understand that kindness is strength, that patience is courage, that the small and the weak can carry the weight of the stars. He lowered his head. You taught us that lesson. We learned it too late. The galaxy you left behind is tearing itself apart. Perhaps that is what we deserve. Perhaps not. It does not matter now. I hope your new home is everything you dreamed it would be. I hope your children grow up in peace. I hope they never know the cruelty we showed you. May your new stars be kinder than we were. He reached out to end the transmission, then stopped. One more thing. If any of you ever hear this message, please know I am sorry. Not for politics or resources or treaties. I am sorry that I never saw you as what you truly were. I am sorry that it took losing you for me to understand. Goodbye, humans. And thank you for everything. Transmission ended. Valinas sat alone in the silent room for a long time. Then he stood, walked to his quarters, and closed his eyes for the last time. He died that night, peacefully, without pain. The last leader of a dying council, brought low by his own blindness. But in another galaxy, life was beginning. On the planet called New Busan, Admiral Jinho sat in a garden with his great-grandchildren. He was very old now, his hair white as snow, his body frail. But his eyes were still sharp, and his smile was still warm. The children had been learning about history. Their teachers had told them about the old galaxy, about the council, about the long journey through the void. They had come to their great-grandfather with questions. Was it hard? Asked the oldest child, a boy named Hanyul. Leaving everything behind? Ginho thought about the question for a long time. He remembered Earth, the blue planet where humanity had been born. He remembered the first contact with alien species, the hope and excitement of those early days. He remembered the slow realization that they would never be accepted, never be valued, never be seen as equals. He remembered Ambassador Yuna standing alone in the Great Chamber. Asking for help while aliens laughed at her, he remembered the moment he gave the order to leave. Yes, he said finally. It was hard, but some things are worth the difficulty. Do you miss the old galaxy? Asked a girl named Yoonji. Sometimes, but not often. The old galaxy was not our home. It was just a place we stayed for a while. The youngest child, a boy of 5, climbed into Jinho's lap. Grandfather, will the aliens ever find us? Ginho smiled and held the boy close. Perhaps. Perhaps not. But it does not matter. We are not hiding from them. We are not afraid of them. We simply chose to live our own lives in our own way. Without asking for their permission, he looked out at the garden, at the flowers that grew in soil from a dozen different worlds, at the birds that had adapted to a new sun, at the children who had never known anything but peace. Remember, little ones? We did not leave in hatred. We left in hope. Hope that maybe someday those we left behind will learn what we learned long ago. What did we learn? Haniel asked. Jinho was quiet for a moment. The wind stirred the leaves. The twin suns of New Busan began their slow descent toward the horizon. We learned that kindness is not weakness, he said softly. That patience is not submission. That forgiveness does not mean forgetting. He paused. And we learned that sometimes the loudest message is silence. The children nodded, young faces serious with understanding. Now go play, Jinho said, his smile returning. This old man needs his rest. The children ran off, laughing, into the golden light of the setting suns. Ginho watched them go, his heart full of something he had not felt for a very long time. Peace. True peace. Not the absence of conflict, the presence of something worth protecting. Humanity had traveled across the void between galaxies. They had built new cities on new worlds. They had raised children who would never know the pain of being unwanted. They had created a civilization founded not on power or pride, but on kindness and hope. And in doing so, they had answered the Council's contempt with the only response that mattered. They had lived well. They had lived free. They had lived human. The sun set over New Busan, painting the sky in colors that had no names. And in the quiet of the evening, surrounded by the laughter of children and the whisper of wind through leaves, Admiral Jinho closed his eyes and smiled. This was home. This had always been home. They had just needed to find it.